company was founded on a technical achievement. It was founded on the idea that whole food nutrition is fundamental to health, and its absence was somehow eroding our health, was somehow impacting us in a way that many people saw as a chronic fatigue, but other people saw as other conditions as well, whether they're glandular dysfunctions or whatever that might be. So, and you have to sort of put this place in time. Remember, that was 1958 that this occurred. Think about 1958. This was sort of state of the space race, right? That's Sputnik, right? And this is where we are today. A little technological leap there, right? This was a telephone. Not where I came from, though, on the farm in Canada, a crank, crank, crank still, right? Hey, Mildred, can you connect me to the Waltrons? So you have to sort of put it in perspective. Here's a company way back here in the dark ages, right, here, that came up with this idea that, of course, what you put in your body is going to influence how well your body performs, and, of course, what you don't put in your body could undermine how well it's going to function. Pretty basic stuff. But it was revolutionary at the time. No one really believed that. So let's take a look at what went on. Here's 1958. In the first decade, the company started out right away with this idea of whole food nutrition. It came out in the form of Formula 4 with treated and grain concentrates. It was much more than just a multivitamin and mineral then, just as it is now. It's about feeding your cells the things that they need. It's vitamins and minerals and lipids and sterols and enzymes and all of those things that make the body work really well. That was amazing at the time. But this discovery here led to the creation of a product called Liquivite, because of course if it's good for adults, it's good for children, right? Their cells are the same as ours, they're just growing and producing them much faster. And Neo Junior here led us to Liquivite, which over the years still delivers that same basic principle of providing whole food nutritional supplementation for children. Now, along the way, Liquivite had some things added to it and the formulation got improved, but it all has its origins back here in Formula 4 with treated and grain concentrate. So this was a brand new idea. Even the idea of gelatin encapsulation was pretty much brand new in 1958. You know, let alone doing them the way we were doing them, putting that sort of a fill in it. At that same sort of time, protein became a big portion of the company's story. You see this sign here? It says NeoLife, eat protein. Okay? The company's always been about protein. One of the big challenges with protein back then, though, is it tastes terrible. It wasn't water soluble. I mean, you could put it in water or milk or anything and it would just sort of lump up. You ever cook just flour and water together? If you don't put a lot of energy into it, you're going to have just lumpy water, right? So the same thing, they didn't mix together well, and they didn't taste good either. So what the NeoLife folks started out doing was figuring out how to fix that problem. So first thing they did was develop protein instantizing, this mechanism by which lecithin, a naturally occurring compound in the diet, is used in relationship to proteins in very low temperature control conditions and mixed in a way that lecithin, which is a lipotropic factor, if you will, it's like a solubilizing agent, tends to drag the protein and make it wet, tends to solubilize it, mix it together, then make it all creamy. It was a huge step, and we were the first company that offered that sort of technology to the marketplace. Well, this protein instantizing process that went on over years and years and years of development from 1958 and ended up in the ProtoGuard process that we still use today. So that origin way back there, we just kept building on this technology that we developed and improving it and improving it and improving it till we have this technology we have today. And the ProtoGuard process is what allows us to assure that in every single serving of protein that goes out the door with our brand name on it, that all 22 amino acids that are involved in human nutrition are present in that product, because we have these exclusive ways of putting them together. For example, proteins denature in the presence of heat, but they don't denature entirely. Only certain amino acids are more susceptible to denaturing from heat than others. So we've worked to make sure that that doesn't happen by continually refining these processes along the way. It resulted in what we call initially high PER, protein efficiency ratio, which was an animal-based study. We got away from that some years back and went to this protein digestion corrected amino acid score, which is a more human-centric deal. Now, in the academic idea, regulatory idea, a PDCAAS value of 1.0 is considered excellent. All of this comes back to the fact that we've been doing this since forever. This, proteins have been fundamental to the company since day one. This is decade 2, 68 to 77. You all remember 1968? At this point, we started expanding this idea of whole food nutrition. We developed Neoplex concentrate. It was part of the investigations into vitamin C and how it's utilized and metabolized in the body. By studying that, we found that vitamin C never exists alone in nature. It's always accompanied by these factors, whether it's citrus or whatever, but primarily citrus, that help it do better things in the body. So we had developed Neoplex concentrate that is made from these bioactive components that always accompany vitamin C when you see it in the food supply. Therefore, we developed it way back there in the late 1960s. Put it in the product so that it could be together. At the same time, we brought to market this idea of lipotropic adjunct. Lipotropic factors are things that are supposed to be in your food supply, that when you consume them, they function as components that help keep blood fats in circulation. Part of the problem with that, as diets got restricted at this period of time, naturally occurring lipotropic factors began to disappear from the diet, and their circulating fat started becoming a problem, contributing to plaque formation. So we brought this product to market way back in that period of time, along with digestive enzyme supplementation. I won't go into that in detail at the moment. Back in that same period of time, 1975, Dr. First joined the company. Those of you who know Dr. First know that that was a monumental thing that happened. What happened is at this point in time, the company turned its product destiny over to scientists. Not that the sales and marketing group haven't always been involved in asking questions and so on. Whether or not things got done and how they got done and when they got done was at the pace that science facilitated that. So there were a lot of things that came to market that we never really got on the bandwagon. We never did synthetic beta-carotene, even though every one of our competitors at one time was selling that 50 milligram dose of synthetic beta-carotene. We never did that. We never got into the germanium craze that went on because there wasn't any evidence of that. Okay, there wasn't the data that supported it was appropriate. So as much as it was getting a lot of market attention, sort of the nutrient of the year, if you will, in the marketplace, we never got into that sort of a program. Dr. First immediately brought some things to us, double amino acid chelation, where minerals are hard to absorb, so he had learned that by enrobing minerals in amino acids, they are more readily and quickly absorbed. He also brought a product called ToxGuard. He was a cancer researcher, and he learned a lot about ways that you can block cancer, and he saw that in nutrients, so he brought to us this ToxGuard formulation, which was a guard against the toxic compounds. That later led to BetaGuard, which with a few little evolutionary steps is the same product that we have today. And then at the same period of time, the Scientific Advisory Board was formed. In decade 3, we had a few technical achievements here. We developed threshold control technology, which is a way that we cause nutrients to be delivered into your body at a sustained pace, but it isn't sustained release. Sustained release is just about slow disintegration. We can do that too. But this is about threshold control. So you give somebody a product like vitamin C or vitamin B, you quickly reach the threshold, right? So in water-soluble nutrients, vitamin C and vitamin B, it's important that you get to the threshold, and that was the process behind it. One of the things that helped us develop this technology was the creation of our artificial stomach. These things are common today. They actually look more modern than this these days. But way back here, in this particular decade 3, between 78 and 87, we were developing this idea of, we had the 6 stages of nutrition: diet, digestion. So diet is everything you eat, and digestion is the process of breaking it down, right? So we knew that that was fundamental, and we started working on ways to demonstrate that. How do you know what happens to that tablet when you swallow it? I mean, how do you know? You can do some blood studies on humans, maybe, if it's something that pops up in your blood that quick, or it's something that can be analyzed readily, but so how do you know? So what we did was we developed technology that allowed us to mimic the gastrointestinal tract. In this case, the artificial stomach contains a solution that is artificial gastric juice. It's against the law to steal people's gastric juice for this purpose. Okay, so you make this artificial gastric juice, and then you set it at a certain temperature, and then these devices go up and down like this, which replicates peristalsis. Okay, meaning that natural agitation work in the gastrointestinal tract. So we put that together, and out of this, we developed technologies for targeted delivery. We know that when you take one of our products and it gets in there, that it's going to disintegrate probably entirely inside of 30 minutes, unless you wrapped it up in a big piece of peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay, which is going to take a little longer to break that down. But if you just took the product, it's going to disintegrate, break down very quickly. But then you have to know, after it breaks down, it's got to dissolve, right? You want it to go into solution, and then, of course, you want it to disperse. Because if you think of the gastrointestinal tract, the digestive tract is a pipe, right? And the ports are on the sides of the pipe. You don't want all of the nutrient just going down the center. So you want to disperse it in the intestinal mass so it comes into better geographic proximity to maximize absorption potential. So we go do all of these things in the artificial stomach. Targeted delivery allowed us to create systems that are resistant to the acid of the stomach, yet break down readily in the more alkaline environments of the intestinal tract. So you can take something like Acidophilus plus, which is a very sensitive proteinaceous beneficial microorganisms, right, probiotic. In the stomach, the body would say, yay, protein, and do the same thing it does to every other protein, try to digest it. Okay? If you swallow a bug, an ant, or a piece of an orange, the same thing happens. The body's going to break it down. So you can't just feed yourself acidophilus or probiotics. You have to protect them from the stomach, and then you have to deliver them. But along the way, when you look at the gastrointestinal tract, there are areas where you want the thing to break down purposefully. So we can develop with this an ability to target a very small region. So if we want to target breakdown maybe something like 1 foot or 1.5 feet into the small intestine, we go through this process of doing that. We now have an artificial intestine as well, and go through the process of doing that and can show that sort of release, so that something goes all the way through the acid environment of the stomach, it moves into the more alkaline environment of the intestine and breaks down. Okay. And in the case of these sorts of products, all of our targeted delivery technology products are that way. In the same period of time, we developed species-specific sourcing. We decided that if we want salmon oil or omega-3s, we want to get them from a single species that we can control. Or vitamin A, we want to get them from a single species that we can control. We don't believe that you just take anything that comes along, so we developed species-specific sourcing requirements. And in the same period of time, we had a study done at Texas A&M University where they reaffirmed that treanin actually works, right? That when treanin is present in the diet, nutrient utilization efficiency is increased rather dramatically. There was a great deal of theory and some evidence to support that, but a lot of people said, well, how do you know? How do you know? Well, the way you find out is you go test it. And in this particular case, what Texas A&M showed is when treanin grain concentrates were present in the diet, nutrients were utilized more efficiently. Next decade, decade 4, lots of things happened in decade 4. What happened is the company finally started getting a recognition for all the great science and technology that had gone up to that point, and we started finding more and more of the movers and shakers in the scientific community not only were willing to listen to our story, but actually wanted to work with us, that actually wanted to hear what we had to say. So we developed carotenoid complex back then, started back in the late 1980s. It was a complicated product. I won't tell you through the whole story, but it was unique enough that people around the industry started hearing about what we were doing, people in the academic community. We actually did a bioavailability study on it, which was unheard of. People had never done those sorts of things, companies before. Why? You eat carrots, they get in your bloodstream. Why? Well, we need to know more about that. We need to be sure that the form and the function and the types were there in the ratios we wanted them to be. So we did a bioavailability study. We did this, the SAB, and we got that published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. That became known to the New York Academy of Sciences, where they invited us to a meeting that was Carotenoids and Human Health. NYAS, that's this group right here, right? Carotenoids and Human Health. It was a study, a session devoted to that, 3 days, talking about that from the National Cancer Institute. In the audience were some folks from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Human Nutrition Research Center at Beltsville, Maryland, and at the Presidio in San Francisco. Shortly after this meeting, they approached us and asked if they could do some work with our product. And to make a long story short, we said sure, and they went on to prove reproved bioavailability, which is good, and bioutilization, which means they expressed not only did it get into the bloodstream, but how it was used. And then they showed that it reduced oxidation in the blood, that it reduced oxidation at cell membranes, and finally that it increased immune capacity rather dramatically, which meant it could keep you healthier moment to moment, day to day, month to month, year to year. Okay, and they presented and published all this data in peer-reviewed journals: American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Journal of the American College of Nutrition, Free Radical Biology and Medicine, the Annals of the Federation of American Societies of Experimental Biology, and on and on and on. Okay, so, and they just did it for us, because they knew that carotenoids were fundamental. Now, out of that work, the USDA actually has a carotenoid laboratory, right? That's a laboratory devoted to carotenoid research that this was the germination, the genesis point, if you will, for that laboratory's creation, was the work that they did, not just with our product, but certainly our product played a big role in it. We went on to develop flavonoid complex and cruciferous plus, which, again, because of this association, we got invited to participate in a U.S. National Cancer Institute protocol at a place called the Southern Research Institute in Birmingham, Alabama. Cells have a protective system inside them. They function as part of the cell's natural protective system. And what they showed is that when bioactive ingredient components of cruciferous plus were present, cells responded more fully. During that same period of time, we became the founding sponsor of FENRIG, which is the Plant Polyphenol Human Research Interest Group. The first meeting was a group of 4 for breakfast, 4 of the world's leading researchers in this area. The last one we had was last year, and I think there were 400, 500, 600 at the meeting. And we are still the continuous sponsor of that. We developed GelGuard technology, which is, again, part of that process of knowing how to develop things to protect them from the acid of the stomach, so they land in the body. And first whole food antioxidant supplement for kids that was, again, all inside the human food chain sort of stuff. We weren't really thinking about antioxidants for children back then. I mean, you give them a little vitamin C, a little vitamin E, but, carotenoids and things like that that are in this product are a little more complex. In decade 5, 98 to 2007, we established the Global Science Network, which is a network we have with the SAB where major scientists and researchers from every scientific discipline that's important to our product line are as far away as a few keystrokes in email. We brought GR2 control, the glycemic response control, to market. We developed the technology. We tested it in a human clinical trial. We were invited to present it at the annual meeting of the American Dietetic Association, which was a big surprise because they don't always buy the same stories that we do. But Dr. Karugi went back there and presented it, and then it was published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. And that's not happened before. The American Dietetic Association doesn't invite supplement suppliers to their meetings, because the idea that supplements, they would tell you can get everything you need from your food. And then they realized that all we were doing was supplying people with everything they needed from their food that they weren't getting. So they began to understand that we are not a supplement in the traditional sense. We are about delivering food in alternative forms, those bioactive components from whole foods that we all need to function properly, that we just simply don't get enough of. We developed Salmon Oil Plus molecular differentiation, a big story there. Typical of us, we did a human clinical trial. We developed clinical evidence that it was bioavailable and utilized. We showed that in just 8 weeks it can lower your triglycerides, lower your cell membrane inflammation factors, improve your inflammatory index, and all of this was presented and published also in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. Later on, that data, we came in touch with a fellow named Karsten Gronert, who was a transplant from Harvard, who had gone to UC Berkeley to establish a research laboratory there devoted to omega-3s. Dr. Gronert was one of the guys that had done the very early omega-3 research that wasn't about what omega-3s are. It was about how they are what they are. We know they're anti-inflammatory, but how? How are they anti-inflammatory? And he developed that. He and Dr. Karugi got together and produced some information that he presented at this Bioactive Lipids and Cancer Inflammation and Related Diseases, the 11th annual symposium of that, right here. Interesting title for a bit of research, bioactive lipids, omega-3s are bioactive lipids, right? In cancer, okay, do you think of omega-3s in cancer? You should, right? in inflammation. There's a relationship between cancer and inflammatory factors and related diseases. So anything that is an inflammation-sensitive disease, anything that ends in itis, arthritis, any of those sorts of things, are all mediated by these bioactive lipids. This sort of work got us to this most recent decade, which is decade 6, salmon oil plus. We continue to do research, but evidence of our work was cited in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the top of the food chain when it comes to medical journals. And when they cited it in there, a lady named Dr. Emily Chu is the director of the National Institute of Health, Vision Health Center, made a recommendation that everybody should consume an omega-3 fatty acid every day to protect their eyesight. And in there, she cited an article that was published in the Journal of Translational Medicine, right, that worked its way into the New England Journal of Medicine. And in there, they cited some research. And 3 particular pieces they cited. One of those was ours, and ours was the only human clinical data, right? Everybody else had mouse data or rat data or some other data. We had the only human clinical data. So, it's just a sort of a cap on this technical achievements in industry first. I don't think, as far as I know, and I've been reading these magazines for a long time, no one in our industry has ever gotten anywhere near the New England Journal of Medicine with their research about their product being cited as a reason the whole population should take something. Okay? No one has ever done that. So, these sorts of things are just showing you that we continue to do that. We continue to set these new achievements, not only for ourselves, but for the industry. We continue to do things that the industry only wishes they could do. Now, we have an advantage over them. One, we've been on this same path since day one. This is all about human nutrition, what belongs in your body and what doesn't. And what happens when it's not there versus what happens when it is there. So, this is our stick. This is our deal. This is what we are since day one. Okay, so the fact now that this has all come around and all these folks are trying to play catch-up with their Dunalea lacillina or Blakeslea trispora or whatever it might be, is just them grappling with the idea that they're trying to catch up to a company that's been in the lead for decades. And we're not slowing down. Now, see this top secret thing here? I'm going to let you in on a secret. Okay, it's a really, really big secret. And that is, everybody in the Scientific Advisory Board is sworn never to let out secrets. Thank you very much.